Welcome to the video edition of The Fourth Curtain, featuring this week's interview. Catch the extended audio version with Alex and Aaron's commentary wherever you get your podcasts. On with the show.
Welcome to The Fourth Curtain, friends, and today we have a very special episode with a very special guest. We're joined by none other than Amir Satvat.
Hello,
Day, Amir is a biz dev executive at Tencent. I got that off your LinkedIn. I hope that's still right. The largest video game company in the world by revenue. I looked this up. Is it something like Tencent? Something like a $22 billion company?
We're in the tens. We most certainly are, Alex. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay. It's a big company. But his side hustle is his game community that he built to help people find a job in the games industry. He and his community has gained a lot of notoriety over the last couple of years as the games industry has been hit with a lot of layoffs, about 35,000 positions eliminated in the last 3 years alone. He was recently awarded the Game Changer Award at the annual Game Awards celebration this past December. I saw on your website you have a mission, and under the mission, there's a quote: "Doing good for others is its own reward." I love that. It's a great message. I wish more people had that point of view. Welcome, Amir. It's great to see you. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. I just we live in a complex world these days, but you hold on to things that you love and feel really positive about. And you talked about one, Alex, which is trying to do kindness for others. But I also today look forward to celebrating another, which is I just love this industry and meeting, other great games people and just having fun conversations. So this is a real treat to be here today. Thank you.
Well,
Awesome.
I'm sorry you ended up on this show then. No, just kidding.
Yeah, sorry, man.
I get the sense that you're an optimist and a positive person. Have you always been that way?
I have. I think that my parents, I get a little bit of this from my family and a little bit of it from my wife. I was born in the United States, but my parents came from Iran in the 70s. My dad came here in 1970 to New York to train as a doctor with nothing but his briefcase. And, certainly my parents went through a lot to get to where we are, having the comfortable life we have. And so I think they never complained about everything and tried to help others. But also for my wife, who's a development economist, and she really is passionate about her work the same way I'm about games. She'll go to a place like Nigeria and come back and be like, honey, I went to a place where people live on household income of $1,000 a year and the maternal mortality is 30 times what it is here in the US. And when you hear something like that, at least for me, you realize that for most people in this country, you really have nothing to complain about ever and should just be grateful and try to be kind to others. So I owe those two groups for that.
Yeah, no, that is quite some perspective. It's not really the way it is here, though. People do like to complain, don't they?
Yeah, Alex was just complaining before we started recording.
I will admit I'm a pretty good complainer. But,
everybody complains, but you know what it is? I feel like there's complaining and there's like social complaining, the same way people used to say like social smoking. I feel like social complaining is fine. That's what you do with your friends, right?
Okay, it's a little peer pressure. Everybody's complaining. Got to do a little bit too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I would love to chat about your game community.
That's like the biggest topic, right?
Well, I think it's fantastic, and it's definitely needed. How did that get started?
It's very interesting. I'll give
I'm sorry. We need to include what it is exactly too.
Yeah, because Alex was telling me about it, and it sounds, I hadn't heard about it, and Alex was telling me about it. I'm like, what? That's insane. That's awesome. And he was just like giving me all these details and like explaining this like whole thing that it is. And yeah.
Well, I really appreciate it, guys. I'll give you a little bit, a backdrop, because I think it's important to explain what it is and why it's important. So I have loved games my whole life, but before any of this, 2022, 2023, all the layoffs that were happening, as we were talking about in pre-discussion, grew up in a small town in Connecticut, not in like the boonies, But I did not know a single person in the games industry, not for lack of trying, until I was 35 years old. And so despite the fact that I always wanted to find a job in games, I didn't know what to do. And personal decision, I'm very close to my family and the diaspora of Persian people that I live around here in the Northeast, so I never wanted to leave the East Coast. To make a long story short, I finally broke through at age 38. But when I finally did, I feel like I finally found someone who would let me work remotely, which was Amazon, and that was great. And now Tencent. So I've been in the industry for 5 years, which has been just such a blessing. But, I find that people, when they go through a challenge like that in their life, often have kind of polar reactions. Some people, it's like, oh, they had to climb the ranks and they're like, oh, I'm going to be tough on other people the same way it was tough on me. But other people, which was my reaction, I think say to themselves, you know what? I had to go through that. I'm going to do anything in my human power to make sure that someone who's in my shoes doesn't have to go through the same thing. So before I started the community, there was always something in my mind to begin with that I wanted to try to do something that was going to help other gamers in some way, finding jobs, having support, anything. Then the cuts start in the late 2022s going into 2023, and I decided to start our community. What our community is Amir Satvat's games community is a grounds up, zero profit, zero income community effort that seeks to provide common sense resources and support for gamers that I wish I had had in not only trying to find their career, whether in games or not as gamers, but also to make them feel a sense of support, to never feel like they're alone, and to have the things that I think they would need to find their way. Because my career started in investment banking, I have a pretty thorough background between that and graduate school in data analysis and these types of things. And so it started with one resource, which was I found a bottoms up way of crawling every company in the games industry, started with 50 companies, and now have a 99% complete list of 3,300-ish developers and publishers. And because I crawl every single web page individually, it's the cleanest imaginable data bottoms up of every role across 20 functions. So it started with that and people being like, well, it's the most comprehensive source of jobs. But then I added 4 categories of community coaching, mentoring, CV reviews, mock interviews, art portfolio reviews. We started with 10 people. We now have 2,300 plus people who offer free coaching, and they've done almost 65,000 conversations for the community for free.
Oh, wow.
We give away.
Wait. So hold on. Yeah. Like the free coaching, this is like, hey, could you look at my resume, give me feedback, that kind of coaching, or like help me refine my interviewing skills? Like what are we talking?
We started with just mentoring, general mentoring. You can call me for any type of mentorship about any topic. Then it expanded into 5 different types of coaching. So now we have mentoring, we have review for CVs and for LinkedIn profiles, we have mock interview coaching, we have specific art portfolio coaching, and I also now have one of the top 10 Discord communities as part of our larger constellation, which itself has 10,000 plus members. And we now actually have dedicated reviewers, tens of reviewers just on the Discord itself to provide help there too.
That's cool. Super cool. How are you finding these coaches? Like, are they just volunteers, folks that have either come through your community that are like, you know what, I'm happy to help?
It's all just volunteers. Everything in the community, I think we have a few secret weapons. One is that when I need to, I can flex the data muscle to do some of the more horsepowery things that we need. But I also think the fact that we genuinely do it for no money and that I also work in the industry, it has meant building this network, this connective tissue of trust between the hiring managers, the recruiters, the people in the community. That's why we have across all our platforms, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, and Discord, we have 500,000 unique monthly users. And in an average year, we have 4 million unique people who come across our community. As best as I can guess, I now have a cashman that about 70 to 80% of the game industry comes across our community in some way, has come across our community in some way. And 1 out of every 5 jobs found by a gamer passes through our community at some point.
Huh. Wow. That's
cool.
Amazing. So 4 million visitors, that's way more than like people looking for a job, right? Because I think the game industry employs something like 200,000 people in the US. Is that right? I don't know.
My best, that's actually a good question. How many people work in games is actually a very complicated question. I've been trying to answer it for almost 3 years. I've concluded, so there's direct game jobs and indirect games jobs. My best guess, guys, is that 230,000 people worldwide work in direct developing and publishing. But you're absolutely right, Alex, that what that indeed means is, in fact, despite the fact that we are very well known as a games community, I've tried to expand that definition that you're a gamer even if you don't work in the industry, if you love games. And so I would say only about 20% of typical volume in like a week is actually people who indicate as computer games on LinkedIn as their industry.
Huh. Okay. Very interesting. So let's back up a little bit, because you said something at the top that I think is super interesting, which is, I think you said two things. One, you never, let me see if I got this right. You never met anybody who was working in games till you were 35. You didn't get a job in games until you were 38. Is that right? You get that right?
That's right. That's right.
But had you always wanted to work in games? Like, were you looking and you didn't get that job until 38? Or were you like, it didn't occur to you that until you met somebody who was in the industry that, oh, maybe I could actually do that?
Oh, no. I started applying at 21. I had interview offers, all kinds of places, Blizzard, EA, etc., many, many places. But the problem is they wanted me to move. They would say, move to Irvine, move to Seattle.
Okay.
And so I could not get someone to give me a job on the East Coast of the United States. And there are only a few places. And the few that I tried that were actually in the East Coast, like Bethesda and so forth, I just, just because of luck, couldn't find opportunities.
What do you got against the West Coast? You don't want to leave.
You know what it is, Alex.
the best coast.
Connecticut's just the same. Connecticut's the same as California, right? Isn't it? Ish. I don't know. Maybe not. That's not fair.
So it was Amazon Games. Was it Amazon Games the first one? Or was it Amazon?
It was. So I started working at Amazon and AWS, and then I broke through at Amazon Games as the BD and strategy lead. I had a team of BDs for their Prime Gaming program. And then actually I was the producer for Amazon Games Montreal. And then when Amazon cut remote work, that's why I had to make a change. And so that's why I ended up going over to Tencent and I'm now in BD. But it's actually super interesting. I grew up that community I told you about, of hundreds of Persian people, and I'm an only child as well, very close to my family. They were so tight-knit that I learned Farsi first, just slightly before I learned English, and they didn't have a school, so they made their own Persian school. And so it's very hard for me to express just how important being here in New England and being part of that community and being part of my family is. And so it's the only thing I love more than games. So couldn't shake me off of that. Yeah.
So okay. So what was it like getting into the games industry after? So you were in? Did you say you were in investment banking for a while? So what you were doing?
So I started out in investment banking at Goldman Sachs. Then I was in graduate school for quite some time because at the time I assumed that this time you always keep hope, right? Hope never dies. But pragmatically, I was like, there's no way anyone's giving me a job. There's no such thing as remote work. And so at the time, as I mentioned, my dad's a doctor. Many people in my family are in healthcare. I think many people in life have diverse interests. They have many things they could see themselves doing. And so you don't get option one, you go to option two. And so option two was I had been working in healthcare banking at Goldman. So I was like, okay, my career is going to be in healthcare. And so I went to graduate school. I got a master's in health policy. And then I did my MBA and a master's in biotech, which is like molecular biology and biochemistry. And so I did a triple master's. Then I was in healthcare, like corp dev and strategy. Then I was in tech, healthcare, and strategy at Dell, EMC, VMware, these types of places. And so it is more explainable when I kind of paint the big picture, basically finance, health tech, and then finally games. But in terms of what I've functionally done, I basically have done the same thing for 20 years, which is I've basically been in some spectrum of BD, finance, and strategy. And so that's how I finally broke through at Amazon, which is basically convincing them I've got everything you want on the JD. It's just not in the games vertical. So now let me convince you how nutty I am about games and just give me a shot.
Okay. I'm sure there are a lot of folks who are working in a role that's outside of games and want to get into games. Like what worked there? Like you must have advice.
I definitely do. So like, I think the most important thing is, and I really, as God is my witness, I mean this, from about the time that I knew like what a job was, which is about, I don't know, middle school, late middle school, I got up almost every day, every week, whatever you like. And I told myself, like, what are you doing to this week, today, to get a job in games eventually? And so I started keeping a spreadsheet in about 6th, 7th grade of every game that I played, heavily annotated by what I thought about it, detailed stuff and that. And so I played over 2,300 games in my life.
Whoa, wait. Really? And you've got a spreadsheet?
I do.
With all of these games in it?
I do. Is
this on your community website? Because this sounds like an amazing artifact.
It is not. I have a list of everything I played, but I keep it private to myself. But I draw upon that spreadsheet for all the articles and resources and other things I write about. Of course, it's front-ended because, as you know, there were so many games in the NES era, SNES era, PACA era, and so forth. Anyway, but to make a long story short, my advice is, one, you should play as many games as possible to be very, very well informed and to think about it all the time. Don't just fixate on one game. Don't just play COD all day. COD's a perfectly fine game. Play lots of games. Advice number 2 is I read voraciously everything that I could. Next gen, PC gamer, reading all the online blogs. Like I constantly thought about and read about games. And finally, the third thing is, even though I couldn't get a games job, and now I'm talking more like college, out of college phase, I tried to always focus on what skill I could develop to eventually have in games, even though I wasn't necessarily in that area yet. And so since I knew I couldn't be in games, I figured my area would be, again, finance, strategy, business development. And so always ask yourself, what are you going to put on the table that makes it as easy as possible for that hiring manager to eat the one thing you don't have, which is you don't have it in the games vertical? And so those are kind of the 3 things I tried to do. And of course, as you get further on, this didn't start until 35, I tried to get much better about networking and just meeting other people in the industry, but that came quite late relative to the other things.
Did you play Halo?
Okay. I did play. Yes.
Well, you played 2,300 games.
I did. I played Halo and Bungie. Yes. And Destiny. I beg your pardon. Yeah.
I'm guessing you played like a couple of Halo games, probably. If you got 2,300 on there, I mean, you must be a big fan of Dave the Diver because he's all over your website.
I am.
It's like your favorite game, right?
It's a good game. I haven't got that far into it. But it's like you said, I play a lot of games too, just to check them out. And Dave the Diver is a legit cool game worth checking out. It's
a wonderful game. And I like it even better when you meet like the dev team and they're like really lovely, as good as the game is. It takes it to another level. And I met J-Ho at DICE, not this last year, but the year before. And he was so nice. And we just really hit it off. He actually brought me, which I have in one of the 4 rooms behind me of games collectibles, he brought me a sushi box that you can't get retail from the team that had all kinds of collectibles in it from the game. And I was so deeply touched by that. Yeah.
Oh, you have 4 rooms behind you filled with game collectibles?
I do. I've been collecting those as well since I was probably, I don't know, six or 7. Awesome. Yeah.
That's You're good. Like the biggest video game fan of all time.
I really love games, and it's a reminder to anyone listening to this podcast, you all really should give people more of a chance with remote work, unless you want to lock people like me out until they're 38 years old,
Well, I think there's a lot more of that happening now. I mean, our studio's remote. But Aaron, were you gonna? I cut you off, Aaron, didn't I?
Oh, you're good. I was gonna say that you have 4 rooms. Do you have to have one? Like, are they themed? Do you have one thing that's like, this is the
He wants to know if you have a Warhammer room. Do you have a whole room just for Warhammer?
But do you have like a cool, like any old stuff? They have a helmet like Alex says. I remember when Alex got that helmet, actually.
I have some cool things. I have, let me 2 or 3 things that are pretty cool. I have a complete set of every single amiibo ever made, including like the really hard to find Japanese variants. I have a complete set of every figure alternates and promos of the old WoW miniatures game, if you remember that one.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of statues. I'm actually very good friends with the First Four team, if you know First Four Figures, and they have very nice statues. So I have a lot of rare, of some of my particularly I love of like Zelda, of like actually my favorite game of all time is The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD. So my favorite collectible of all is King of Red Lions from First Four Figures, which lights up.
That's cool.
Wow.
Nice. That's
amazing.
Awesome.
At some point, you'll have to give us a tour of your collectible rooms. That sounds pretty cool. All right. So one thing I did want to get your perspective on, because I get asked this a lot, and we kind of debate this a bunch. And I'm not actually sure how important let's rewind. I think it is important. Why are we in the situation that we're in as an industry? Meaning the last few years have been a contraction, at least from the workforce, instead of expansion.
Sure. So Amir's opinion, not Tencent's opinion, but Amir's opinion on this is, I think there's a few factors, and I'll pick the 3 or 4 most important ones. I think factor 1 is, I think the match that lit it off certainly was incredibly built up demand because of COVID and overhiring that happened as a result of that, which certainly was not sustainable. But that's just kind of like the crack of the whip. I feel like the more fundamental problems that we have are cause number 2. I feel like game development has simply become way too expensive. I think in terms of how we make games, the cost of making games, if we even, for example, compare a AAA title in the West at hundreds of millions of dollars to making Mario Odyssey in Japan for like $80 to $100 million, we're even very high compared to that system, let alone the fact that if you take the cost of a developer in, say, the West Coast, that developer in Eastern Europe or in Asia might be, a third or a fifth of the cost or something like that. So costs creep. I think the third thing is there's just too much supply. If you look at the tens of thousands of games that come out on Steam every year, you have competition for games on Steam. Games are longer than ever because they're filled with content. NES era, you could finish a game in a few hours. Now, like a game is 20, 30, 100, 500 hours of content to play. And you're not only competing for game attention, you have streaming, you have music, you have all kinds of other things out there. And we have tons of stats, whether it's ESA or other places, showing that the average gamer simply doesn't buy that many games. And it's just hard for them to consume all the content. Let me think if there are any other big ones that I didn't think of. I think that's probably it. I also think that the most successful games, now that they have live services, have a huge vetted interest in keeping people within those walled gardens and not letting them out. And so if you look at the amount of time that goes to net titles, a smaller and smaller amount goes to net new releases versus those. So I would say that those are the main factors I can think of.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was going to say that last bit is something that we've, have seen as well. It's kind of the whole reason our company even exists. Is
you only need Fortnite.
Yeah.
It's got everything.
For sure.
Okay. All right. Well, so with that in mind and thinking about like the future, do you have any thoughts of like what kind of so I was going to ask you what kind of jobs do you think exist in the coming years, the coming decade? When I was coming out of high school, we had our first computer. This one, I'm pointing at the original Mac behind me. We had gotten that computer while I was in high school. I taught myself how to code. I went to college. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. I at some point decided I wanted to start a business. I knew how to write code. I liked games. I wrote a game. There was no blueprints for industry jobs or anything, Today, it's very different. You can go to USC, get a degree in game design or one of many game programs, etc. But every few years, like trajectory, the kinds of jobs that exist, it evolves and changes, with AI, etc. What do you think the job openings look like in a few years or even a decade?
Is it going to get better?
It's interesting. The number one question, I will choose, Alex, to hear your question with a bit of a twinge on it, like Aaron was saying, because the number one question I get answered that will also answer your question is, like, Amir, when are things going to get better, and what does that look like in terms of what's going to be available? Maybe kind of combining the two.
Yeah.
Both said. I think some things will look the same and some will look different. So the main points I would pick out is, first, I can definitely see a reality where it's almost like development as a service, where the amount of time and length of time the teams stay together ends up being either shorter or the kind of like natural breakup that comes after a release, just because something that people now actually accept in terms of how things are constituted. And so people more fluidly move between projects, and kind of the lines between primary studios that work on games and what a codev or an XDev studio might do maybe become a little bit more blurred. I can see that. The second thing is, I think the types of games that people make are going to be probably different. You have to change how studios are built up because they were built up for a very different cost structure, and it's going to be very hard and take time. But I think a sustainable future is one with shorter games that are more kind of like idea games that maybe harken back to several console generations back, that are like 3, 5, 10, 15 hours long max. In terms of how people do them and in what functions, most functions I think will probably be okay. I actually studied for 20 functional categories that I look at. Which ones do I think potentially really are having a little bit of trouble? And the ones that have been hurt the most are...
We'll be right back. If you like what you're hearing, like and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. And now, a word from our sponsors. Great games aren't just made, they're crafted. Pixel by pixel, idea by idea. Amber doesn't just develop games, Amber forges the future of play, one project at a time. From the magic makers at Disney to the tech giants at Amazon and Warner Media, the biggest names in the industry trust Amber to turn their wildest ideas into reality. Why? Because the talented teams at Amber believe in pushing every boundary, breaking every mold, and having a bit of fun while they're at it. Need a partner who knows the game and plays to win? Amber has the talent, the passion, and a global network that's ready to roll. So let's skip the loading screen and get straight to the action. Discover how Amber can power up your next project at amberstudio.com. Do you want your game to live forever? To supercharge it with immense powers of endless content, a buzzing gamer community, immortality, and coin? CurseForge for Studios, an exclusive service for visionary game developers, allows you to add safe, cross-platform mods to your game and enjoy all the benefits of user-generated content without any of the risks. With CurseForge for Studios, you can harness the creativity of our 165,000 devoted creators and the traffic of 43 million monthly gamers. You can also level up with premium mods and grant your game new revenue streams. Trusted by AAA studios, CurseForge for Studios is an immortality potion for your game. Enter studios.curseforge.com and join the UGC era.
Leveling up your game dev career but not sure where to start?
Maybe you're trying to break into the industry, looking to connect with other people who are making games.
Consider joining the International Game Developers Association, the IGDA, the world's largest nonprofit member-driven professional association serving all individuals who create games.
I was in the IGDA in Chicago, met a lot of people. Great way to network.
The IGDA exists to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers.
Discounts,
Educational and advocacy-based resources,
mentorship.
and solidarity across 160 plus chapters.
To join the IGDA, visit igda.org/membership and use the code IGDA 4th Curtain 15. No spaces there.
To get 15% off 1- and 2-year memberships, as well as a student membership.
Joining the IGDA is a great move for your career, and as a nonprofit supporting everyone making games, it's a great move for the whole community. Join today. Hey listeners, it's Alex from the 4th Curtain.
And Darren here. We want to give a quick shout out to the team at High Vibe PR.
High Vibe PR is our boutique communications firm. They're all about companies and brands defining the future of gaming, entertainment, and culture.
Look, when you're doing something big, you need the right people to help you tell your story. And High Vibe PR, they're the best at making it happen.
Absolutely. They've helped us at Look North World level up our messaging, connect to the right audiences, and stay ahead of the curve in this ever-changing industry.
So, if you're looking for a PR partner who gets gaming and entertainment like no one else, check them out at highvibepr.com.
That's highvibepr.com. Go give them a look. You won't regret it.
And now, back to the show.
Writing narrative, QA, some parts of game design, and those are basically the three that have had a little bit of the most trouble, because some of those functions either have been reduced, or we could speculate that maybe they're on some type of level of automation or AI aided functionality. The final comment that I'll make is, I actually have reasonable confidence, not just because I'm an optimistic person, that because I track for all those roles that I mentioned in my spreadsheet, I put a little tracker on every single one. So in a unique way that nobody else does, I can see how long roles stay open and how long it takes them to close, both for the entire industry and by function. So I have a sense of what like the sinusoidal function is of what's going on. As I was telling Dean Takahashi a while back, I believe in January, trailing 60-day hiring and trailing 60-day layoffs actually hit an equilibrium. But the big question is where? And one of the biggest things that I think will change is, and this isn't quite function like you said, Alex, but I hope you'll allow me to say this, is that one thing I think about a lot is if you take the Americas, EMEA, and Asia, and you look at where the most roles are in our industry, up until 2022, North America always had the most open roles, and then EMEA and APJ duked it out for 2 and 3. What has now happened is Asia is number 1, EMEA is number 2, and the Americas are number 3. And in fact, last year in 2024, 53% of all global layoffs happened in California.
Yeah.
And so when you put all this together with the cost of development in California, Seattle, etc., versus, again, Europe and parts of Asia, as much as it pains me to say it, it is hard to not conclude in the data that there is a geographic shift that I almost think of in my head as a big arrow with the butt of the arrow in the west coast of the US and the head of the arrow, say, in Eastern Asia, of gradually roles shifting. And we three could be here 10 years from now and be like, well, the industry recovered at some macro level of total opportunities, but that mix of where they are could have completely changed.
That is really interesting.
That was us, right, Alex? Were we a part of that 22? That 53%?
Yeah. Well, 23, but yeah, sure. At the same time, we're seeing games like the Black Myth of Wukong and Marvel Rivals, and games that are coming from development centers outside of the US crushing it. It's really interesting, those two trends together. Is it too cynical to think the following? What I've heard from folks the last few months is that investors, like AAA is it's not dead, but it's like it's now the domain of those like platform holders or those who can actually afford to take the, what is that, a 9-digit risk, 8-digit risk, big risk. But where investment is going to pick up is in the smaller games, indie, triple I, is that a thing? And you kind of said something similar about smaller, more games being built that are smaller in scope. But if we end up getting a lot more of those games, are we not going to see the competitive landscape at that part of the market get untenable as well?
Like saturated?
Yeah.
It's definitely possible. And I think that it is hard to say. I think oversupply of anything will create market problems. I think that what you were saying definitely could be possible, and there could be another correction when we maybe overcorrect in that direction. But what does seem clear to me is that if you were to try to provide a steady state of what the mix of production looked like, that you wanted to give you the best shot of getting back to some equilibrium of jobs wherever they are, I think you have a better shot of having that model of a smaller number of kind of tentpole IPs and franchises that make the AAA games that are typically safer. And then the rest of the production goes to things that are maybe more cost or scope responsible.
Makes sense.
But it's not, I don't think it's a panacea. I think nothing's a panacea.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to see how things evolve this year and next year. 5-10 years, who knows? I mean, that's like
an AI
forever. Yeah. All right. So a different line of question. I'm really curious about how you sort of navigate life, having a day job and a side hustle. And I don't know if you would refer to your game community as a side hustle, but you answered a question. This is not Tencent's opinion; it's my opinion. You have a professional day career, and you have this passion, this project that you're doing on the side. What's that like for you? How do you like manage your time? How do you like emotionally compartmentalize? I ask because we do this podcast. This is kind of like a side project attached to, the main dish of having a day job. So I could totally relate. So what's it like for you?
The honest answer is I like to joke that it's like my 3 jobs. And like the number one and most important job is being a dad of 3 boys and being a husband and a family member and a friend. The second job is the Tencent job. And then the third job is the community job, because I have to do my day job. Otherwise, I can't do anything else. And so what I would say is I feel very happy that I have a super supportive wife who let me put in a lot of time those first 6 months, starting in November 22, to kind of set up the community. It was very difficult to balance then, I'll be honest, because I was putting in probably 20 to 30 hours a week doing that on top of my job, on top of the kids. But I always put the kids first, and like always the kids and the family first. If I couldn't do something else. Like,
what's the age range of your kids? How old are they in school?
6, 4, 1, all boys.
Okay.
Oh, that's a lot of work.
That's some work. Okay.
And so it was very intense there.
All
Thank
boys
you.
too, huh?
Yeah, all
okay.
And so it's quite something. But that was very intense. But after that initial period passed, I can say that I can do all the community work. And some people don't believe it. They even think this sounds nuts, but I really can. I can do all the community work and the posting and everything that I do on LinkedIn in about 10 to 15 hours a week. I've just become very efficient at it, and I have processes for everything, but I also get help. The Discord community, for example, is 99% autonomous. I have a group of mods who basically do everything. They're amazing. For a lot of like the resources that I do for the community, I have people who help me with a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And so I would say we have now achieved a steady state that is pretty manageable. And in terms of when I do it, my wife and I both drive the kids to school together every single day. So I get up pretty early every day. I prepare my morning post. Then I do the stuff with the kids. I work until the afternoon. 5 to 8 is family time. then I finish whatever I have left for work, then I finish whatever I have with the community. And so most days I do go to bed at like 1:30-ish, something like that. But it's 6 hours of sleep is enough, and I sleep on the weekends. And that's the truth of it. Like, I promise you honest answers and not candy coating it, but like I'm so deeply passionate about it. And now that I have all the data to show the tangible impact that he's having on people's lives, it's so important. I think other than playing games, reading, and like other important things, the only way you make it work, I think, is by making something like this like the thing that you do after your job and your family. That's what I've done.
Right on. What have you been able to measure the impact of the community?
Yes. So we have helped 3,300 people find jobs. And of, the thing that I'm really proud of is if you think about the layoffs, a little bit less than that, but about 10% of the jobs that have been lost, we've been able to place back with the help of our community. And beyond that 3,300, like countless interviews, I frankly even just stopped counting, but like I am certain it's at least 10,000, maybe 15,000 in terms of interviews. But like beyond that, the thing that means the most to me is you can't imagine. It's very touching how many notes and communications I get from people, but moreover, when I see them at events and they'll come up and they'll give me a hug, they'll often have a tear in their eye. They'll tell me, their house was going to be foreclosed and our community helped them get a job, or we helped their partner get a job, or they felt like completely giving up on life. The thing that I really love is the biggest thing people tell me that our community helps them with typically isn't even, oh, Amir, you helped us get a ticket to GDC, or you helped us get a mentor, or whatever. It's this sense of hope and feeling like they don't want to give up, and there's someone out there that cares about them, even if they felt like they were given up on by everybody else.
That's cool.
That's awesome. That's got to be just the best. I saw you at DICE last month, and I'm pretty sure the whole week I saw you at the same spot across the hall from where that Starbucks is in the Aria Hotel, swamped by people the entire time. He's a very popular guy.
Are you playing games now that you're doing all this work? Do you get to add to your big list, or?
I've really slowed down. I mean, to be honest, when I said front loaded, I really meant front loaded.
The dude is working until 1 a.m. What has he got time to play? He's got to play in his sleep.
Yeah.
Someone's got to play all those games.
The truth is, as both of you know, those of us in the industry get really good at getting senses of games really quickly. And so I would say most of the time I am playing, first off, things that I have to play, for work, for a few hours or whatever amount of time I need to have a sense of them. And then I pick and choose the small number of things that I can play every year that I really want to. The first year the community started, I still was up there in the tens of games a year and was able to get it done because there was better balancing. But now, to be honest with you, the community takes up so much. It's too difficult. But I did get to play Civ 7. That was great. I got to play the WoW expansion. I get to play the stuff that really matters to me. Sure.
That's cool. All right.
Well, what is your day job like? Are you BD? Are you doing analysis? Are you like signing games? Are you negotiating contracts? What are you doing?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you know, Alex, BD varies so much from place to place. At Tencent, the way it works is we have for all of Tencent's size, we have a core team of about 10 folks in North America, 6 on BD and 4 in a capacity called Venture Lab, which is folks with like 25 plus years experience in some specific capacity, production, marketing, etc. And we really work as a close tandem to go out there and find studios that we think are really promising. That could be for collaboration on new games based upon IP. It could be working together on publishing. It could be supporting them in any other facet that you could imagine. And so I would say the most common scenario is typically coming together on a new game that we believe has potential, typically within the areas that were classically Tencent strong areas, which is mobile, live services, also has opportunity in China. But as you saw with Black Myth Wukong, I think that has become much more expansive now, and it has given the company a lot more confidence to what to look for. But there's no question that now, compared to say 3 years or 5 years ago before I was at Tencent, I think the company has definitely become more selective in picking and choosing its spots, given it's already identified a lot of the low-hanging fruit and the bigger opportunities. So it's a lot of fun. And to be honest with you, I actually really love it because, to your point, it being at DICE, something I love about being a BD, which is why I basically have done, again, that or strategy for so long, is I love meeting people. And it also, I think Tencent and Amazon have really helped me and coached me in making it really symbiotic with the community, in the sense that it's all just meeting people and trying to help them. And sometimes that's I'm helping them with my professional hat on for Tencent, and sometimes it's I'm helping them personally because of what's going on in their careers. So it's all just meeting people and helping people, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's almost a therapist aspect to a therapeutic aspect to both those roles, I guess. Well, I guess 2 questions actually. It makes me think. Can you describe maybe the best you can for folks? Probably a lot of folks listening know about Tencent, but it's probably a lot of folks who aren't familiar with the company. The company's like I said at the top, the largest video game company by revenue, based in China. Could you describe a little bit of the scope of Tencent, like the games that Tencent's involved? I know Tencent was an investor in League of Legends and Epic. I know they own. What's the name of the social network in China?
WeChat.
WeChat. It is WeChat. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But could you describe a little bit like the footprint, of Tencent for listeners?
Oh, sure. I think obviously many of the things we can't talk about, but I would say that the scope of Tencent, I really think about Tencent, and I'm sure everyone has their own take on it, but particularly when I compare it to other big companies I've been in, like Amazon, like, Dell EMC and so forth, I think about Tencent as really first and foremost, even though of course they have many of their own great studios, I think about it as a premier games investor, in the sense that if you looked at the biggest footprint of where Tencent is, it is in those relationships and trust that they've been able to build with studios and invest in. And really, I think it covers a much wider gamut than people think. So like you said, it covers things like, Riot in MOBAs, but we also have investments in people that do, survival and extraction. And we do games that are like the smallest games that you can think of, for example, even more in our European markets, but we also do the biggest ones. And so I would say it has a very diverse footprint. And I think the biggest surprise for me, learning about it as an outsider versus being on the inside, is that it's not just like this narrow gamut of like mobile things or live service things or big things. I think we support a lot of different teams across a lot of different things.
Yeah. Was there, when you first joined and you were like looking at the whole list, it sounds like there were maybe a couple that were surprising. What were those?
There were. I'll just say that I was impressed at Tencent's ability to be brave and to take risks on a lot of independent things and smaller things that, are not the things that you would think of as like sure bets and like the easy winners and stuff like that. And many of those have worked out, as with many big companies. Some of them have not, but I thought that was pretty interesting. Okay. Is there anything, what's it like being part of Tencent, a Chinese company right now, with the political environment in the US? Is it weird? The honest answer is it's really not. Like, for now, I would say I don't really feel it. Well, the honest answer is I don't feel it, but I think I don't feel it by design, which is why our team exists in the first place. I think the reason Tencent invested all this money in this team of people in North America is at the end of the day, all this stuff and all these matters for business, I think they're very personal and they're very, I think they're very local. And so the relationships that we built and the companies I knew, they're people that I've had relationships with for a long time. And I genuinely believe that, particularly with some of the bigger ones that I've known the longest, we have enough trust and enough personal relationships that I think that is the most important thing. And the other stuff is, I haven't seen an effect, at least yet.
Okay. It seemed, like I remember like with the ByteDance and the TikTok ban, and then Marvel Snap went down because ByteDance was the publisher. And then you read these stories about NetEase kind of divesting out of their the Western investments. And I'm just curious if any of that has been sort of like systemic or reactionary to the political landscape here in the US, or maybe that's not a topic you really want to talk about. I find it unfortunately fascinating, kind of like one of those things.
No. I genuinely am not being coy. Like, I can just say I am certainly aware that there are dynamics like that coming, and certainly many of us have read about some of those dynamics, like at NetEase and in other situations like you mentioned with ByteDance. But I can really say on the ground, as a BD for the team, it is pretty much so far, thank God, knock on wood, been business as usual. I don't know if that will ever change, but like it hasn't changed for now.
Yeah, right on. Cool. What are you looking forward to? What are you looking forward to in the industry or games coming up? What's your outlook for 2025?
My outlook for 2025 is that I feel like we have two very big beats that are very, very important. And I hope that they will both cast a little bit of sunshine at a time that we all desperately need them. One is the Switch 2, and I'm a huge Nintendo fan person. And the second one is GTA 6. And I have no reason to believe that both of those won't do incredibly well. I hope, as I do with any big release by anybody in our industry, that they exceed expectations. If we look at the timeline, they haven't had a, let's see here. They haven't had there was Super Mario Wonder, but Odyssey was all the way back in 2017. And so timing would suggest that we're due for another big Mario game. So that would be pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah. That's a really good point, Amir. I think those are two huge beats this year, knock on wood, that potentially gets us back on this nice upward trajectory. It'd be a good story for the industry.
New Steam Deck too, I think.
And new Steam Deck, yeah.
Is that happening?
I think so, this year maybe.
Wait, is it just you think so, or did they announce it?
Everyone thinks it's going to happen this year.
I think there've been pretty hot rumors. Yeah, pretty hot
rumors. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be.
But you know
I'll
what
be
it
in
is,
line.
Alex?
I love my Steam Deck. Yeah.
I love the Steam Deck too. It goes back to when you were asking about, well, if we switched over to the smaller games, like, wouldn't that get saturated and maybe have problems too? And what I was actually really thinking when you said that is like, you know what, he's right. But also, I think we need these like health checks to make sure that like the big stuff that is supposed to kick butt still can kick butt the way it does. And so like, I imagine you both would agree, like seeing those two really kick butt, I think would make everybody feel better.
Oh, absolutely. And I honestly, like I was asking that question less about general health of the industry and just more about like, I'm a total optimist. I think there's never a better time to be getting into this industry than the moment we're discussing, whether it's today or tomorrow or the week after. Opportunity space is always growing. Just take our company as an example again. It's like this market that we're in didn't exist 3 years ago. Yeah. 3 years from now, there's going to be a whole new set of things like the Switch 2, a whole new set of things, to kind of go after and dig in. So for me, that question about sort of like the influx of capital going into these smaller games on Steam, will that sort of like cycle as well? Maybe not. It's less of a question about general industry health and more of a question about if I were thinking about getting into the industry now or starting something now, where would I start it? Would I start it there, or would I aim somewhere different? So I agree with you. I think it's I think it'll be a great beat this year to get some industry growth again at the macro level. Go ahead, Aaron.
I was going to say, is this is this because I can remember that there's always this like cycle, right? Like a consoles, like it's getting all the games it's getting saturated with games. People want the next console, another console's coming out. So then and then you start to see all these layoffs and studios shutting down and games, because everyone's like getting the other console or whatever, Is this period different than those periods? Like it's different, right? Is it because of the big COVID push, or is it what makes this? Because as far as I can remember, as long as I can remember, the industry's always had this like little window of everyone's getting laid off, and then there's this huge like, hey, new consoles coming out, everyone's getting jobs.
I would say the console crash in the 80s was different.
The 80s,
that everybody lost their jobs, and there was doom and gloom, no hope for the future. When the whole Atari bust, that whole thing. And
so it's just like that, you think?
It took the PlayStation to sort of bring everything back.
Yeah,
I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's as bad as it was then. To Amir's point, the industry got we hired a lot of people. I think a lot of people from outside the industry came into the industry. I know there were a lot of engineers that were working on just internet stuff that came into games. So we had a huge expansion in 2020.
Yeah, no disagreement with any of that. I was just going to add, Aaron, that I think two things are a little bit different. One thing that I think is different is you wonder kind of like what the console wars cycle is going to look like, right? Like PlayStation 1 is now bringing everything to PC. And Xbox now is like, well, everything is an Xbox. And so the hardware still matters, but it's changing. I think what that changes is still figuring itself out a little bit. But another thing is, I go back to where we started the conversation where Alex was asking, what are the main factors? One that I actually realized I didn't mention that I should have mentioned is, I think the novelty of new tech is changing. And what I mean by this is, I'm a huge Sierra fan. And I was watching Roberta Williams' interview, and she was talking about King's Quest. And this wasn't the main point of what she was talking about, but she was talking about how every time they did a new King's Quest, and as you both know, they did 8 of them, she would go to Ken and the team, and it'd be like, oh, well, the tech has changed.
Thank you for listening to the Fourth Curtain podcast. Visit us at thefourthcurtain.com to find our monthly newsletter and support the show via Patreon.
Lives of all three of us as gamers.
The Fourth Curtain podcast is a production of
every
Fourth
time a
Curtain
new game or
Media,
console
lovingly
came,
edited by Bryen Hensley of Noise Floor
NES to
Sound
SNES.
Solutions.
Then
Production
you went to
support
3D.
by May Lee
Then
with
by the
community
time I was in
management by
college, it
Doug
was like
Zartman
World of
and art
Warcraft. Well,
production
now we
by
have
Paul
online
Russell.
play. Then there was
Thanks
VR,
again for listening.
4K, HDR. And we've kind of hit a point now where there's not that thing to put on the table that gets everyone to go out and buy the new stuff and buy the new exclusives. And so I really believe, although people don't talk about it much, that lack of like a hardware and innovation thrust that people feel in that sense, I think that that's kind of one of the challenges as well.
That's a really interesting observation.
Hey,
that's a good idea. I'm getting the URL. You're out, Aaron. All right, let's go.
Yeah. A lot of people say AR. Like I wonder, if I had to bet, who knows? But I actually wouldn't bet on VR. I would bet on AR. And I bet if they could get AR really inexpensive and light and impressive, maybe that would be a possibility. Who knows?
Yeah. Aaron's just waiting for the implant. He's first in line, ready to get that implant so he can just hook himself up to the Matrix.
I actually think something I've been seeing, I don't know if you've seen this, but I've seen they're taking old game footage, like from like the PS1 era, and then they have AI redraw it. And it looks amazing. It like the graphics look realistic. It's really cool. I think that might be like a little gimmick that comes out soon.
Interesting.
AI graphics.
Yeah. Who knows? I think this conversation a couple years from now is going to be very different. Like just the speed at which
we're
things
just going to be staring at the screen because we're going to be communicating through our brain implants.
I'm not getting the chip either.
Neither am I.
Especially if it's Elon's chip, I ain't getting the chip. No way. No way.
Don't tell
you see how many times the spaceships and everything are freaking cool, but they crash all the time. I don't want to crash. or get the virus. All right, Amir. I apologize for, as the last question Aaron asked, I realized I just jumped in and tried answering it in front of you.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Bad. It's
Not
hosting
at all.
101. Thank you. Thank you, Amir, for hanging out with us. Super fun conversation. Would love to hang out IRL. If you're going up to GDC, we should hang out. And just awesome stuff that you're doing with the community. I know it's had you've got the quant on it. It's got such a positive impact, both actual results, but also karma. And I just wish the world was filled with more people like you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I really, really, really love games. And I feel like the best way you can say thank you, in addition to saying thank you, is actually helping people in the toughest part. So I really appreciate you guys and everybody out there who thinks that this stuff matters and is worth talking about on podcasts and conversations, because it's not just about Amir, it's about many people like me out there who are all trying to make the industry better, and I'm proud of all of them.
Right on.
Awesome.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. We'll see you around.
Yeah, thanks, Amir.
Thanks, dudes.